Hello YouTube. I want to talk a little bit more about my favorite research area. That's the ancient underwater aliens or humanoids, whatever you decide that they are. And I want to talk about some of the areas that I don't usually speak about, and it will give you a glimpse of my research. The cult of amphibian people was spread far beyond the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean. They were worshipped by the ancient inhabitants of the Russian North. The author of one of the first ethnographic works, titled A Brief Description of the Ostyak People from 1715, Grigory Novitsky, he actually saw and described an idol of the Hanti people. And the idol was called the Old Man of Ob, or the God of Fish. The idol was actually kept in the prayer ground on the estuary of Irtysh River before the Samara city. And that's in those places where the Yermak's Kazakhs, Russian conquistadors, had visited. The old man had the appearance of a boar with a trumpet nose made of tin, glass eyes, small horns on his head, short arms, and a golden chest. The Hanti carefully wrapped the idol in scarlet cloth, red cloth kaftan and rags. When going fishing, the Hanti people ate the sacred fish soup, having previously anointed the fish god with it. If they were unlucky and returned from the sea without fish, they began to beat the idol and spit on it. When the fishing was getting better, they again paid this idol honors as if nothing had happened. Now, let's move on to Central Asia and speak about the veneration or great respect for amphibious people in high-altitude Kyrgyzstan. Amphibians were also greatly respected in high-altitude Kyrgyzstan. This is the story told to the participants of the expedition of the Moscow Geographical Society, led by Professor Ipatov. And the gentleman who told them, his name was Aksakal Uichi, the keeper of the Sarichelak Lake, located at an altitude of 4,500 meters. Almost 100 generations ago, there was a large and fertile valley on this place. Once, from celestial mountains, golden people came to it in clothes made of fish scales. They built a large city of Sai-ho at the bank of the flowing river in the valley, and for many, many years they lived in peace and quiet. They worshipped the god Ho, who made a fish head and who had a fish head and a human body. That god lived in the marble reservoir of the temple of Big Water. Through his servants, the golden priests, he taught the surrounding tribes agriculture, cattle breeding, and much more. Once every 100 years, one golden priest died, and the rest performed the sacred rite of the fish god Ho. So, it consisted of this. The most beautiful girl of the valley was brought to the reservoir of the temple. She bent down to the water, from which the god slowly swam out. He was kissing the girls on the lips. And in due course, she gave birth to a child with a golden skin, who became the new priest of the god Ho. Once Sai-ho was conquered by the army of the Hamrai state, only one priest remained alive, who ran the temple and began to ask God for help. The fish god Ho swam out of the depths and made a long, vibrating sound. The sound made the rocks tremble, and torrents of water quickly flooded the entire valley. This is how the Sarichelak Lake was formed, where, according to legends, the fish god Ho is still alive. Obviously, he knows a lot about the infrasound weapons or some other technology we may not be aware about, but I believe that in Mahabharata, some of the weapons listed also resembled the weapon that the god Ho used in Kyrgyzstan. Now, let's speak about the anecdotes, a race of half fish, half people led by ONS. Let's look at Mesopotamia. This is what the Greeks actually called the land. According to the people of Pan-Babylonism, science and culture originate from here, or to be more precise, in the southern part of Mesopotamia, Sumer. Among the remains of the colossal clay cuneiform library of Ashurbanipal, the pearl of the most ancient literature was found in the ruins of the capital of Assyria, also known as Ashur, Nineveh, which was destroyed in the 6th century BC. Gilgamesh, who saw everything to the edge of the world, knew everything, brought news of the days before the flood, personified Sumer. It was him that both kings and Chaldean magicians tried to imitate for the next 3 millennia. It was not so long ago that it was customary to associate the official beginning of human civilization with the legendary valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates. The magnificent helmets of the Chaldean kings and the wonderful ornaments of the queens shone with gold. White stone fortresses grew up in deserts and mountains. The way of life has not changed practically for thousands of years. But what the Chaldean magicians did, what they knew, what they did in their inaccessible ziggurats is much more amazing. We will look at one of them through the prism of available information. Now, in Sumerian Akkadian mythology, there are stories about a mysterious race of half fish, half people led by ONS. According to the preserved fragments of the history of Babylonia by the Babylonian priest and historian Beroes, who lived in the 4th to 3rd centuries BC, people lived like animals until half fish, half people came out from under the waters of the Persian Gulf and taught the inhabitants of Mesopotamia writing, sciences, construction of cities and temples, agriculture, and metal working. The scientist and historian Beroes, who was also a priest of the temple of Baal, wrote about amphibians. He wrote for Alexander the Great 3 books in Greek on Babylonian Chaldean history and cosmogony, called Babylonian History, excerpts from which have been preserved to this day, mainly in the works of ancient historians. He drew the material for the books from ancient archives stored in the temple. His works were very popular among Greek and Roman historians. Now, the surviving works of Beroes were published by Richter in Berossi Caldeorum Historiare que Supersunt in Leipzig in 1825. Here is what is written in the first book on the history of ancient mankind. In the first year, a terrible creature named Oan, in ancient Semitic Oanesh and in Greek Oanes, appeared from the Red Sea, Persian Gulf, near Babylonia. His body was like a fish, and there was another head under the fish's head, and similarly human legs were next to the fish's tail. His voice was human. His image has been preserved. During the day, this creature was among people on land, without taking any food. It taught people to read and write, mathematics, arts of various kinds, taught them to build cities, temples, established laws, showed how to collect grain and fruits, that is, taught everything that relates to cultural life. Since that time, nothing else has been invented. When the sun went down, this creature, Oan, dived back into the sea and spent the nights in the abyss, because it was an amphibian. Of course, it sounds fantastic. The amphibian lived in the times before the flood, let's say 25,000 years ago, and taught the skills and knowledge to the previous civilization, which then passed on this knowledge to our civilization. Nevertheless, its images are still preserved in the surviving sculptures of the ancient Assyrians. According to the testimony of Apollodorus and Aristotle's disciple Abedin, Beroes called intelligent amphibians by the common name anecdotes or Musar anecdotes, and spoke of them not as gods but as half-demons. Does that not remind you of ancient India and the race of underwater demons and their wars with the celestials? They came out of the sea for a long period of time under the rule of various Babylonian, Assyrian, and Chaldean kings. Abedin, in his presentation of the history of Babylonia by Beroes, voiced the names of a number of other anecdotes: Evdok and Neugam and Neubol and Anament. In the oldest temples of the city of Eridu, that's in Iraq, and it dates back to 5400 BC, 6th century AD, archaeologists found heaps of fish bones. They considered them as evidence of the worship of Oannes. According to Sumerian mythology, Eridu was the home of the god Enki, or Oan, and the kingdom of Enki was the water surrounding the world. Now, Russian author and researcher Kalipin, in his book about the vanished inhabitants of the earth, cites the testimony of another ancient Greek writer and traveler of the 2nd century, Pausanias, who reported that the embalmed bodies of two Tritons were exhibited in the temples of Dionysus in Tanagra, a city in Boeotia, and in Rome. He wrote, "Tritons are really an attraction. The hair on their heads looks like frogs in standing water, not only in color but also because they are very smooth and it is impossible to distinguish one hair from another. The rest of their body is covered with scales like the skin of a shark. They have a human nose, gills behind the ears, a very large mouth, and teeth like a wild monster. It seemed to me that their eyes were gray-green, and their hands, fingers, and nails were covered with a crust like seashells. From the chest and abdomen downwards, instead of legs, there is a dolphin's tail." On many ancient Greek coins, you can find an image of a triton, and on some ancient Syrian coins, you can see an image of a half woman, half fish. The true appearance of the anecdotes is restored not only by their description by Beroes, but also by numerous works of Assyro-Babylonian sculpture discovered in the territory of Mesopotamia. Images of Oannes and other half-fish, half-people existed even in the times of Beroes, as he reported it in his history. Bas-reliefs depicting Oannes on the walls of the palace of the Assyrian king Sargon II, 721 to 705 BC, in Khorsabad, Iraq, and on the ruins of the old Persian capital Pasargad, founded by King Cyrus the Great in 550 BC, Iran. Drawings of the remains of a giant statue of Oannes found by archaeologist Austin Henry Layard in Kuyunjik, that's Iraq, in mid-19th century. Ceramic figurines of half-fish and half-people with a height of 12.6 centimeters, presumably discovered during the excavation of the Babylonian city of Nineveh, mid-19th century. Assyrian cylindrical seals with the image of Oannes and other half-fish, half-people, gems with the image of fish-tailed Oannes, and other finds stored in the British Museum. Yeah, most of them are kept in the British Museum, and I will have to speak about the museum and a very interesting discovery that was made in Iraq and is kept in that museum. But I'll speak about it in some other video. Now, I want you to look at Beroes. For several thousand years, the name of semi-legendary Sumerian priest Beroes familiar to us in the former USSR, thanks to the novel by Polish writer Bolesław Prus titled Pharaoh. Well, the name of the priest, anyway, has been known to mankind. The Soviet writer Parnov, who wrote about esoteric subjects under the watchful eye of the state censorship, came closer to the canonical, legendary retelling about the priest in his book titled Shreds of Darkness on the Needle of Time. Very cool title, and his books were very interesting. Parnov, who had enviable access to archives by Soviet standards, was most famous for the trilogy about Soviet criminal inspector Lusin, which included the novels The Casket of Maria Medici, The Third Eye of Shiva, and The Alexandrian Gem. Listen, I dare say the novels were very interesting and on par with Western books on the subject. In this action-packed works, the main character, a criminal investigation Russian officer Lusin, with the participation of his friend, historian and writer Berezovsky, investigates mysterious crimes in which the riddles or enigmas of history are mysteriously intertwined with modernity. However, having been published back in 1971, this book was soon put under the knife, meaning it was banned by Soviet censors. So, I think we should recall the following episode. Here's what it says. Without hierophants or high priests, issues that concerned the vital interest for the country, for example, the Great War, could not be resolved in the ancient world. Therefore, having received a proposal from Assyria to finally resolve the territorial and border issues without a major war, the high priest of Kemi, Egypt, agreed to this, although Pharaoh wanted war. Since the king of Assyria made his proposal as if on behalf of the priest of Babylon, the hierophants, high priests, agreed to this on the condition that the great Beroes would talk to them. The fact is that the high priests also wanted this war. That is why the priests of Cam demanded that the meeting take place under the following conditions. Firstly, Beroes will come to them alone, and secondly, there will be no solemn ceremony. The hierophants will be waiting for him at the appointed time in one of the remote secret dungeons of the temple. If the Chaldean magician does not arrive on time, it can be regarded as the fact that he changed his mind and therefore showed disrespect to the highest college of priests of Camp. Well then, a merciless war will ensue. Beroes fulfilled the conditions. In the dead of the night, having overcome the high walls, Beroes found himself in a protected inner park where no one was walking, because with his inner vision he saw a certain door at a distance of several hundred kilometers, which was located exactly in this park. By the way, this was the only door that led to the very secret hideout where the silent hierophants or high priests were already waiting for him. Yes, indeed, no one walked in this park, because it was rather not a park but a huge, deadly serpentarium. The most venomous snakes, ferocious, deadly spiders, nimble, disgusting scolopendras have always been the masters here. Beroes walked past them calmly, without hurrying, and all these evil spirits crawled away from him with horror, although Beroes in general did not pay them heed. He quickly crossed the park, found the secret door, guessed the secret of its mechanism, and without wasting time, closed the door behind him, but from the inside. There he brought the younger priest into somnambulistic state, because they were waiting for him, armed with secret priestly weapons. A few minutes later, He was calmly talking to the Hierophants, high priests, about business, addressing each of them by name, although they had never met before. From that moment on, Beroes was considered a respected brother of the Supreme College of Hierophants. His word meant a lot. Naturally, there was no war this time. So you see, we knew a few things about the paranormal phenomena and ancient mysteries in the old USSR. And I will continue to bring such knowledge accumulated by Soviet and Russian writers, not in the best conditions for them to do the research, but they persevered. So I'll bring such knowledge to my audiences. There is more to tell about the ancient underwater humanoids or aliens, and this search continues. So stay tuned for my videos. If you can support my research, please look at the links in the description to this video. Please tell others about my channel. I appreciate your attention. Please ask them to subscribe. Thank you.